Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Foss. I am on the committee to help with the institutional advancement section. You probably get a lot of emails from me, so I apologize. Today, we're going to welcome Jim Grief. He is the Director of Communications at AALS. He has a presentation that he is going to share that walks through all of the resources that AALS has to help those of us in advancement. Following that, we will go into our breakout rooms, and I will walk you guys through that when it starts. So without further ado, we'll just hop over to Jim.
All right. Well, thank you, Heather, and to the section for hosting me today. I'm Jim Greif, Director of Communications at AALS, and I thought I would present a background on the communication services that AALS hosts that I think would be of most interest to communications development and alumni relations professionals in law schools. So let me bring up my presentation real quick. Sorry about that. All right. Okay, well, first I thought I would give some background. The AALS Executive Committee expanded our mission in 2014 to serve as a better voice for legal education. And this was amid, many of you remember, steep enrollment declines and very bad press. The AALS, the Executive Committee established a communications department as part of that expansion. Though I joined in late 2004, I am not the association's first communications director. That honor goes to Kara Treschel, formerly of Georgetown, and then also Liz's colleague at GW Law, and now at the university generally. She helped set up some of our social media accounts and other activities. So shortly after I arrived, this association launched an improved website that was more focused on law school news than internal AALS meetings and events like the previous website was. And then our first communication services to members also started in 2014, but have grown significantly over the last 7 years. So first we have the Legal Education News Digest. And the purpose of the Legal Education News Digest is to inform the community and the public about issues important to legal education. And we divide the digest into 5 different categories of news. So we have the general legal education news, racism and law enforcement reform, inspired by last summer's protests. And we have law school news, which is basically that's the largest section of our digest, and that's most of the submissions come from the law schools themselves, and we have a form that I can share at the end of the presentation where law schools can send me information and news. We also have a higher education section that is general higher education news. Higher education is, of course, feeds into legal education eventually, so we keep posted on what's going on there. And there's also things like student loans and news about other policies such as Title IX that everybody in the legal education community needs to keep apprised of as well. And then we also have news from the legal profession, and we concentrate mostly on news affecting recent graduates. Well, our audience for the Legal Digest, Legal Education News Digest consists of deans, communication staff, many of you are here today, other faculty and staff subscribers. We have our allied organizations such as the ABA, LSAC, NALP, and the bar examiners. We also have a fair number of legal education reporters that subscribe to our digest, and then various bar associations, lawyers, and judges. So we have about 2,000 or so subscribers, I believe, and anyone can sign up to receive the digests via our website. So what do we include in our weekly digests? And hopefully most of you do receive these in your mailbox. You'll get can see example in the right-hand corner about what that particular digest looks like on a regular basis. So we include news about new initiatives, programs, clinics, courses, centers, and partnerships, major gifts that establish these new initiatives or expand current efforts, accomplishments of faculty, staff, deans, and students. So these would be like awards or other acknowledgements, public service efforts, public interest, and also related research that is to benefit the public good, dean announcements, new deans, and then what we need to have basically to post any article is a link to the article or press release, and then that way we can include in the story. So we wouldn't post things like pictures with captions or things on social media posts. We have other ways to distribute that sort of information, but we would need a legitimate story or press release in order to share your news. And so there are a few things that we don't include in the digest. And this is such as faculty or deans quoted in the media about the news of the day. So unless it's about legal education specifically, we would not include somebody quoted in the media. I will say that faculty being quoted in the media is very important to AALS. I think it helps advance the public understanding of the law, but there are just too many faculty quoted in the media, so we're unable to include all of those in our digest. For the same reason, we also don't include op-eds unless they are related specifically to legal education. Articles about rankings. So we'll have an article when US News releases their rankings, but not on the individual stories that schools often put out about how well a particular school did. We love all our schools equally, and we don't want to feed into the ranking industrial complex too much with our digest. And so we also don't include internal stories. And what I mean by that is news about alumni. That would be, I think, great for the law school, your particular law school community, but isn't as relevant to our broader audience. The same thing goes with advisory boards. So you have somebody in your community that's been appointed to a particular advisory board. We typically don't share that kind of information. Also with moot court placements, there's a lot of moot court competitions. So unfortunately, we only focus on those students or student teams who have won the competition or received an honor in that particular event. All right, so each week we add the articles from our Legal Education News Digest to the AALS website. The archive goes back to 2014 and is organized by category. I have the long list of categories that are there. I won't read them all, but you can see that we take the time to, when we look at each story, to identify which categories that it goes into. Now, this is the part that I think is most relevant to maybe some of the development folks, is that the archive can be used to research, to explore how other schools have announced major gifts and new initiatives. And the way that you can do this is you can visit aals.org. You can go to the search bar and you can enter the topic that you want to search. For example, I entered in News Center, and the results are on the right-hand side in the picture there. And we should have some improvements coming soon to the AALS website, probably within the next probably month or two, that will help making finding things on our website a little bit easier. But in the meantime, you can use our current website to find examples of how other schools have announced things. And we also have a Legal Education News Blogs Digest. We monitor several blogs by law faculty and staff. We compile the digest of the most relevant posts and distribute by email each week. It's the same audience as the News Digest, and we also have an archive on our website, just like the news. One way that the blog digest is different is it's mostly selected by AALS staff, though we will consider posts if you bring them to our attention, and you can do that by sending us to at media@aals.org. And then news, and so that's different than the news because news is about half contributed by law school submissions and then half that we find through our web searches. We also host a regularly updated calendar of conferences and symposia on our website, and it's mailed to all law faculty on a regular basis. We typically do not include single lecture events, but that we have made some exceptions for national figures. This has been one of the silver linings of the pandemic, is that since most events are virtual, they can attract a national audience. And this has been a very popular service, as you can imagine, over the last year, and a good way for folks at law schools to promote their events to a wider audience. A couple of years ago, we also launched a list of books authored by law faculty on our website. And so to be included in our list, and you can see an example of what the list looks like on the right-hand side. Books must be scholarly in nature and published in either 2019, 2020, or 2021. Currently, we have featured the books from 2021, but we can also add books from previous years. We'll just put them in their appropriate year on the website. And co-authored or edited volumes are absolutely fine, as are casebooks. And just as long as they're new, we'll get them onto the website. We also have a YouTube channel, and the channel features videos from AALS conferences and events. And we also include videos from law schools organized into several different playlists. So an example of that is in the picture on the right. There's really no submissions process for these, but you can email us again at media@aals.org to send us videos to consider. And then, and it's updated regularly. And in addition to our current services, we'll consider some future initiatives, and I'd love to hear from you about some things that you think that AALS should consider. We are resuming the Law Student Pro Bono Hours Survey. And if you're not familiar with that, from 2016 to 2019, we collected from law school clinics and pro bono efforts the number of hours that law students submitted as part of their legal education. And so we compiled that, collected them, and released a national number on the value of that pro bono service. And so it's a good survey, gets some traction in the media, and we love to do it. We also, as part of that, we share examples of pro bono projects and public service efforts at law schools, and we highlight about 15 to 20 each year when we do the survey. We weren't able to do it for the class of 2020 because of the pandemic, but we are in the process of getting that going again for the class of 2021. I'd love to create a library or directory of law school news publications, and that can include like alumni magazines or press releases and other newsletters. And so this might be something that we could host on the AALS news site, so that's something that we're considering. We're also starting to include sample online classes from law schools for prospective students. And so we have a page for prospective students, and there's a subpage that has sample courses. We have these courses, we link them through something called Coursera. But as we're doing more research, and especially over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of these courses on the AALS, on your YouTube channels. And so we're trying to think of a way that we can collect them and make them more prominent and get them to prospective students. And then we also have some improvements to the AALS website that I mentioned, just to make some of the news function easier, both for us and the way that we're able to manage it, and also make it easier for users to access that information. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions or hear some suggestions.
Hi, Jim. I'll ask really quick.
Sure.
Can you expand a little bit on some of the resources that you mentioned might be helpful for the folks in development?
Yeah, so I think for development, I think it's ways to promote some of your news about major gifts. And so, we will, I'll admit that we're not as concerned with how much money was given to a school, or it's more about what it's for and what that money will allow the school to do. Though we do frequently, gifts usually come with some new initiative or with some major expansion of a building or something. So we're happy to be one way that the school can get the word out about those things. And then the other way would be the research that I mentioned. And so you can use our archive to learn more about how something else was announced. Maybe you're considering a new clinic that was sponsored by that was made possible by a large donation. Then you can look at our website. Have others announced a similar initiative? How did they announce it? Maybe help with some of that legwork and having it all in one central location, as opposed to just trying to find it through the vastness of Google and the internet. So those are some of the main ways. And sometimes development professionals are also involved with the planning of major conferences or events, especially if they're sponsored. So our archive and sorry, not our archive, but our calendar of um, uh, symposia and events can be used for that as well.
I have a question for you too, Jim. Thank you.
Sure.
When you talk about books, I don't mean to get into the minutia of books, but if you're on the marketing side, that is minutia. So are we thinking books that you're interested in, if you could help me understand sole authored books, editions, edited books, what is sort of the interest level with respect to the parameters that you would like? Academics books, case books, treaties, all that stuff. So is there sort of a cheat sheet or a guidance that you could provide, so we're not sending you things that you're not interested in?
Yeah, so the list is pretty broad, and the only limit I would put on which books we would not include. So there might be a novel, or your professor wrote a murder mystery, fiction or something like that. It may be based in sort of legal principles and things like that, but it's not something that we would include. So we would include scholarly books on a particular topic. It doesn't have to be a case book. It can be, just any sort of nonfiction book, but it could also be a case book, and it could be a co-edited volume, as long as the editor, one or more of the editors, are a faculty member at one of our law schools. So it's, other than sometimes we'll get like news about a professor that wrote a comic book, or something like that would not be appropriate unless it was specifically about the law. But so almost any nonfiction book would be able to be included. And that's about all we have for parameters. We don't, and we do have a submission form that is on the faculty books page, and on there it does go into a little bit about which books we accept, which it's so broad that it's almost not worth mentioning. It's just about everything we'll take.
All right. If there are no other questions, we will go ahead and open up the breakout rooms for further discussion on this topic and others as they arise. Little change of plan. Liz is going to host the communications room. Brooke's going to host the marketing, or I'm sorry, the alumni and development room. And I'm going to stick around and get people where they need to go. So I'm going to open the rooms now, and you should see them pop up and you can join them. If not, just hang out in here and I'll get you where you want to go. So these are open. Welcome back, everyone. I know Brooke was finishing up a really interesting
Right.
conversation and got kicked out. In our room, we were sort of talking about, in many ways, crisis communications, but how that goes over to the alumni and development side, and how when you're dealing with, individual donors and individual alumni, and, potentially losing their support, what we're doing about it. But it sounds like everyone's doing a really good job about, bringing people to the table and having those conversations. And I think the last thing someone said was, "This too shall pass." So I think that's a good way to think about it. So we're back in here just for a few minutes. So I just wanted to share if there are any takeaways or anything anyone wanted to share from either of the rooms. We'll start with communications to see if there's anything to share for the group.
Yeah, we had a really nice discussion. We talked a little bit about our worries. We are worried about commencement, some of us, and some of us are worried about the fall and how events and in-person, the combination of in-person and COVID learning is going to be. And then luckily, Jim was in our session, so we got to pick his brain a little bit more for some additional AALS resources and ideas. So poor Jim is gonna have to go back to gonna have lots more ideas as a result of this session. But thank you to my colleagues for such a wonderful conversation.
Thanks, Liz. Brooke, anything else to share from the development breakout?
A good conversation about overcoming alumni donor obstacles, and really, trying to create that case for support, depending on what the objective and objection is to giving. I thought that was a really robust conversation. And then we sort of ended it with some of the hiccups that we're all experiencing in one way or the other, and how constant communication and transparency helps healing. And as you mentioned, this too shall pass. So
Thanks, Brooke. And one thing, Liz, that you said that really, I wonder if it's something that we're all dealing with, that sort of fall events and getting together. I mean, my dean today was like, we should do an in-person BOV dinner in July. And I was like, wait. Let's hold our horses. He's like, we can get food trucks. And I was like, my head exploded. And so I'd be really, I'm wondering if maybe that should be a later webinar conversation as more information is out there, how we're all adjusting. One thing that is sort of starting to percolate on my radar is that our alumni are going to be a lot more comfortable. Our students are going to be a lot more comfortable doing things than maybe the university is. And so how we're sort of balancing expectations and how things are going to look in the fall, so that we can sort of put that note up, because it sounds like that could be a good conversation. And that's one where I think communication will be key. So with our last couple minutes, I'll, open up the floor, leave the room open. Does anyone have anything to share? Any insights, any questions for the whole brain trust that we have here?
So I just had my first in-person meeting in a year plus last week. It felt absolutely wonderful, and it was really, really weird. And at the same time, we just had in-person commencement on Saturday. So I'd be happy maybe at a future session to talk a little bit about that. But I think the university as a whole, and then more specifically the law school, I think those entities have been a little bit more aggressive in looking at the in-person perspective. And I keep telling the dean, well, it takes two to tango. So I might be willing to go out and meet somebody. I don't know if our donors and alumni on the other end are going to be comfortable doing that yet. So it might take some time on the back end, but at least at the university and at the law school, they are pushing forward to have more in-person events, meetings, and actually open up for in-person teaching as well in the fall.
Ben, where was your graduation? I'm an undergraduate of Pitt.
Okay, so I don't know if you know where the Pitt is, but it's where Pitt Stadium used to be.
Yep.
So what year did you graduate undergrad?
98.
All right, so I'm a 90 undergrad. So it was at the Pitt, so at our big basketball arena. So for a graduating law class of about 100, it was in an indoor basketball stadium that seats about 10,000. So everybody was socially separated. Each student was allowed 2 tickets, and a very, very limited number of faculty chose to attend. We had a few folks appear live via Zoom on the big Jumbotron in the stadium. And it was a big headache to produce, but it turned out, it was a tremendous event. It really turned out nicely.
Great.
So we have in-person commencement on Saturday. And we've invited back the class of 2020 as well. And we have probably a third of the class of 2020 that's going to participate. We're doing it in the big basketball arena. We started with a limit of like 4 guests per grad. And then as the fire marshal released capacity, it grew to 7. And then on Friday, it grew to 10 guests per grad. So they are over the moon happy with us. And Gigi, my colleague, we put on virtual reunions, and we have a tradition here called Hats and Canes. It's a toast where the Chancellor Dean toasts champagne to the graduating class with their hats and their canes. And we put on virtual hats and canes with them, and it was all via video that we had pre-produced. So the 3L class was joined at the hip with us already because they wanted to do something to mark their year, not knowing if we were going to have an in-person commencement. So we did this online deal in October, this virtual and video piece, and it was just excellent. But they are now so excited about in-person commencement. I mean, so we will all be together. There's social distancing on the floor. There's still parameters, mask required, all that kind of thing. But we're definitely moving forward with in-person. And then we just got a notice today that all staff are to report back to campus by June 1, unless there are special exemptions. And, you can appeal to have an at-home work, situation if you need, and that will certainly be considered by, folks here. But basically, we're rolling back to in-person. Our rate of COVID has really plummeted in the state. We've still got a long way to go about vaccinations, fully vaccinated folks, but they're feeling good enough to open up. And the governor happens to be our graduate, which I'm very proud of. So he's been joined at the hip with LSU throughout all of the COVID discussions. And so we were quite frankly a little surprised that they were opening up as wide as they were and allowing us to go to in-person. But all of LSU has had now in-person commencement this year. So I think they've had 6 or 7 ceremonies already, or maybe more. And then we will be the last on Saturday.
Oh boy.
I'll let y'all know how that goes.
Does anyone's, I know we're wrapping up, but I have a question. Does anyone's universities have vaccination mandates?
Mm-mm.
Ours does too. Okay, so there's a handful of us. Are you guys getting any pushback from alumni on that? We haven't yet, but it's not like widely out there, so I'm a little worried. Sherry, you said you were. How have you been?
Is that just for students, or is that for faculty and staff as well?
Everyone on campus.
Everyone on campus.
Wow.
I don't manage those communications.
Luckily, right?
But there is a response, and we did ask from the communications department. I'll actually, Heather, I'll find it and I'll send it to you, and you guys are happy to, do with it as you wish. I mean, sure, it's not perfect, but it's what we've been responding to when we've had complaints, and also withdrawals of donations. And we even had some students withdraw as a result too. So,
well, thank you for that. That would be helpful, because I'm only anticipating. I mean, luckily for us, it's the entire University of Maryland system, so it's like 18 schools, which is, good luck tackling that. But it's I'm a little worried about our board meeting and things like that. So,
Yeah.
thanks.
No, that sounds like a good question for the listserv to collect some.
Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
thinking that.
Yeah.
Well, does anyone have anything else to share? Any questions?
I'm sorry, I missed the part, the breakout when events were addressed. And I hope that we can all reconnect again and talk about that further. Karen mentioned the hats and canes toast that we did online. And that same weekend, we had a virtual reunions for 7 of our classes. And we're in the midst of planning to the extent that we can for in-person reunions this fall, provided it's safe for everyone to gather. And I'd love to find out more about what you all have planned for your respective reunions. Some of that may have already been discussed, but I hope that we can earmark that and just talk about that as part of the conversation about events next time, or at some point in the future.
So it sounds like events and reunions are sort of a topic of interest for this group. So we'll add that to the list, and we look forward to seeing you guys next month. Our committee meets tomorrow to talk about what's coming up. So thanks everyone for joining this conversation. It was great. And I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Thank
thank you.
y'all.
Stay
Thanks,
safe,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you, Clarissa.